the reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astedka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 209. Bound to be a fun one after the week we've had at Tottenham Hotspur. My goodness, we have a lot to discuss. And let's not even dilly-dally around. Let's get right into it. We'll start by throwing it out to Caroline. She is at CG Stefko. Caroline, what's going on? How's your Sunday?
Man, I don't even know where to start. It's a lot of emotions. The day started off pretty well, way too early, but pretty well, and just went downhill from there. So lots to talk about.
We're going to try and pick the folks up and do a little therapizing, I suppose. We've got Scott along with us. He's at Scott G. Bird. Scott, I know the weekend is not going well for you either. The Iowa State update is not good for the folks out there, but how are you on this Sunday?
Yeah, you beat me to it. I was going to say I fully expected what happened with Spurs this morning. Totally standard performance and a result. What I did not expect was to be absolutely thrashed by Arizona State yesterday. Played off of we'll say the pitch, but played off of the field. Real ugly loss for my Cyclones. But like I said, ugly loss for Spurs. Very much expected. Just glad to be here with you all to talk about it.
Glad that you are here as well. Also glad that TC is here. He is at TC_show. Todd, what is up, my friend?
Any day, sir. Any day that you get to commiserate with your peoples after shitting the bed collectively over 2 games this week in the way that we have is a good fucking day, because catharsis is required even in the worst of times.
It is indeed. If you need to pick me up, I know just the place to go. Head over to digitalspurs.com for your new Tottenham merch. Holiday season is upon us. If you're looking for some gifts for the Tottenham fan in your life, digitalspurs.com is the place to go. T-shirts, hoodies, crew necks, hats, tons more. Let them know that we here at the Tottenham Depot sent you. Again, digitalspurs.com for all your latest Tottenham merch. Told you guys before we started recording, I kind of want to do this pod a little bit differently than we do most, because, over the last few weeks, we've been able to talk about a Europa League match and a Premier League match and kind of separate them. But this week we've got 2 results on the men's side to talk about, and we will talk about a 2-1 victory for Spurs Women over Everton, which is the positive that we get out of this week. But there's, I guess we're going to call this a crisis forming with the men's side right now. And I don't like even bringing it up in that way, because we're all just kind of collectively shaking our heads. Like, this is nonsense right now, what's going on. But I think that it's a problem as much within our team as it is within just the fan base, the supporters as a whole. There's a toxicity right now within everything that's going on. Of course, it's a 1-0 defeat to Bournemouth on Thursday at the Vitality Stadium for Spurs. And then we just witnessed what I can only describe as yet another Chelsea match. Like, that was kind of exactly how that was going to go. Spurs take an early 2-0 lead at home and lose 4-3. It's just like, and injuries and just
mischances
and
general fuckery.
General fuckery was certainly on board as well. Poor officiating. I know, Todd, you want to have at it at that. Like, it was all, none of it went.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. None of it went bad. None of it went well. It was just all bad. And I don't actually, like, I come into this podcast with so much to say, but nowhere to like frame it other than nothing is going right for this team right now. And I think that the toxicity that is built up is overwhelming to me almost, Todd.
Yeah. I think it's important whenever you're facing any crisis to clearly lay out the things that you do know. Okay. So the first thing that I know is that our match day revenues are such that it's not a matter of whether or not we can afford these things anymore. That's one. The second thing is, we sit here in the middle of every season and we lament the players that we're missing because when you play this many matches, injuries and fatigue and sickness are invariable parts of the game. They're just going to happen. And we don't bolster the positions that we know that we're going to need to significantly bolster in the summertime. And then we sit here every season and lament when the inevitable comes true. And then we sit around and start pointing fingers and scratching our ass and our head or wherever you're scratching and looking at it going, well, gosh, this manager really doesn't quite seem to do what we're doing. And if we could just shut the fuck up. We have a manager with a game plan. I know that. We have a manager with a track record of success everywhere that he's gone, building teams from the doldrums of mediocrity into champions. I know that. And I know that we've got a miserly little fuck sitting in an owner's box that's been the bane of our existence for 20 plus years. And that is the only constant. And continuing, Andrew, to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is fucking insanity. And we've gotten to the point of insanity here. This is insane. It's not Ange, just like it wasn't fucking Nuno, just like it wasn't fucking, maybe it was Nuno. And it wasn't Conte, and it wasn't Jose, and it wasn't Poch. It's Daniel fucking Levy. And the way that this club is run as a business, which I've lauded for years, but at the expense of the soul of the football team, soul of the club itself, that is unacceptable.
So here's what I'll say. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I don't actually know. There's obviously a purple and gold contingent, which I'm not slotting you into. Maybe you'd slot yourself into that, but whatever.
Absolutely not. Fuck no, I'm not that guy. The thing is just do it better, right? Hire people around you that are going to help you do it better. Like what you do well. So run the business and set up the F1s and all the things, and that's fine. But when our manager comes to you and says, buy fucking Conor Gallagher, or buy a backup center back that we know is going to check the box for us, or buy my right back help, my left back help, or buy somebody that's going to put us in a position to be more successful that's not fucking 17 years old. And the ownership looks at you and goes, that's not the direction that we're going, Ange. We'll make it work. We have faith in your ability to make it work. That's a failure. That's a failure to us as a fan base and sets us up for discontent. And I think, honestly, all of the feelings that we're feeling, Andrew, from the fan base right now of the purple and gold contingent and all of these folks and the people throwing trash on the pitch like fucking morons, all of this is due to the lack of transparent communication from the ownership board to the fan base. And I think that disconnect is what happens is, and Daniel Levy, as Paul O'Keefe rightly pointed out, is a reactionary son of a bitch. Then as soon as they start calling for his name or start calling for his head, the manager is the quick one to get the axe because it's easy. It's easier to replace a manager than it is to replace a bunch of poorly assembled footballers.
Scott, you and I had this conversation last week about the structure of this club and what it has been built into. And if we just take the most recent transfer window, it was, like Todd alluded to, it was a lot of kids, a lot of ones for the future, guys who you think can be developed. We talked about Lucas Bergvall. We talked about Archie Gray. We talked about a lot of these different players who are coming through, but maybe not quite ready to make a jump in the Premier League and be super, super competitive. But to turn a blind eye to some of the other players that just aren't performing up to snuff is, and I'm not saying Todd's doing that at all, but like, this team was not built to, as currently constructed, make some kind of jump, and it takes time. This is part of what I feel like have been referring to as a long, painful rebuild for too long and too painful of a time. Where are you at with all of this, with the conversation around the manager and the ownership and the way that this is being kind of built and led down a track?
I put all of this on Daniel Levy as well, just like Todd does. I was asked in my Seattle Spurs group chat if Ange is sacked, is this Levy's last chance. And I said, of course not. Daniel Levy is held accountable by Daniel Levy. And that's the massive problem, right? Enoch doesn't care. Enoch is making buckets of money off of this club.
Hand over fist.
They do not care. Daniel Levy holds himself accountable. Daniel Levy has as many hits as he would like. It's just going to keep going. He's the problem. I look back to when I started supporting this club, and we brought in Andres Villas-Boas, right? And we sold Gareth Bale. And this is after we sacked Redknapp too, which was Harry Redknapp. Sacking him was a horrible decision. We bring in AVB because he's like the next hot guy, right? As Levy tends to do. We sell Bale. We buy everybody who FIFA designates as a good purchase, right? Like I'm talking the video game, not the organization. None of them pan out. Well, one of them does in Christian Eriksen, right? But then we bring in Pochettino. We get super lucky. I've said it before on many shows. Pochettino was brought in to get us into a stadium using the youth, which you had a track record for doing well. Got really lucky with the Delhi buy. Got really lucky with Harry Kane coming through the ranks. And we found ourselves in a situation we didn't expect to be in. Then Daniel Levy decides to not invest in that magic that was the Mauricio Pochettino experiment, right? Sacks him, brings in two guys who Todd has already mentioned in Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho, and neither of them can get it done. Conte is wiping Serie A right now with Napoli, who's just a bunch of hodgepodge dudes, right? So it certainly wasn't a Conte problem. It all ties back to Daniel Levy. And then after all those misses, he starts listening to all sorts of different pieces of criticism and decides he's going to hire Ange, which I think was a great hire, but take his focus in the transfer market or squad building focus, right, way over the line. Like there has to be a balance. Rob Guest, I believe it was not Alistair Gold, but Rob Guest that talked about how Spurs are reactionary. And you mentioned Paul O'Keefe talked about, sorry, not Spurs, but Levy being reactionary, hearing things like, do it like Brighton, do it like Brighton. Brighton still has balance, and Levy went way over any sense of that balance. And we find ourselves in a situation where, again, literal children bolster our ranks. I don't expect Archie Gray or Lucas Bergvall to be able to get anything done. There are guys like, say, Yves Bissouma. I still think that was a horrible purchase in itself, right? There were so many red flags in bringing that player into the club. I know Todd's going to disagree with me here, right? But his off-the-field escapades, which are things that I don't even want to talk about, right? Regardless of how they shook out and what actually happened, we'll never know, right? But even having someone in that category is someone I'm not interested in, right? And the dude just continues to make on-field error after on-field error, the penalty he gave away today. So my point here is that we just can't get anything right when it comes to who we bring in. We also can never get anything right in terms of when we move players on, and that's a huge part of our problem too. So it's just a mess. And until Daniel Levy decides to remove himself fully from the footballing operations, which we thought he did, I don't believe that actually happened, right? But until that happens, it's going to continue to be a mess.
Caroline, I want to let you get in here because like we're all kind of just having our say right now. Where are you with this discrepancy between amongst the fan base, between the manager, between the board, between the way that this whole project is going right now?
I just think that there is a big discrepancy between what the club's intentions were for the season and what the fans were expecting. Because I think that if we look back at the last couple of transfer windows, you know, these signings of young players do make sense to set us up for the long term. Like if we're actually committing to it being a rebuild under a new manager, it all makes sense. It's probably going to pay dividends down the line. I mean, of course, we can never know for sure, but you know, it was clear that it wasn't going to be immediate success from this transfer strategy. But I think as a fan base, we're not quite at that point yet where we're comfortable going through this period of having tough games, you know, being short-staffed for the bench. Like I just think that we've also had just a ton of bad luck. Like I think that does have to come into the conversation because I think you could have expected for this squad to weather it a little bit better than we actually have, but we have had so many injuries, and not just like injuries to players who are not significant, you know, to the project. Like we're talking about key players, senior players, the experienced ones who are supposed to be keeping things calm on the pitch. And, it's way too easy for it to fall apart on any given day. And I think that's basically what happened today. We had that boost of getting Romero and Van de Ven back unexpectedly, and then by the end of the game, they were both gone again. So it's, you can't really plan for these things. So that's part of it. But at the same time, I find myself frustrated with the lack of
Yes, you can.
game management, not just from Ange, but like the players themselves, just in terms of decision making. And, I don't think Ange's subs particularly helped today. And that's, kind of been my running concern with him as a manager. But I do feel like we have to still commit to the Postecoglou project, or we're just going to be in the exact same boat again and just go through more pain. And if we can just like try to be patient, which I know is very, very hard in sports when you've got banter from rivals, and just like it's not fun to watch your team lose so often. And I feel like we're kind of back in that spot where we were at the end of last season, where you just wonder, like, does this team just not have it? I don't know, but I don't know. It's a lot to take.
I said this last week. Though, like the injuries are a product of the way this team is playing. Like that, they're a product, and the lack of depth is a product of not bringing in enough depth. Like that's what this is, and it speaks to, okay, you brought in a bunch of kids who aren't quite ready to step up when these injuries happen. Like the injuries are, yes, some of these injuries are a bad stroke of luck. Vicario breaking his ankle is bad luck, and you've got to stick Fraser Forster in there, who's obviously not an Ange Postecoglou type of goalkeeper.
Yeah, maybe you should have done something about that in the fucking summer.
Well, I agree with you, but they didn't.
And
so
then
like,
we're going to come on. Well, we're going to go down the list of all these injuries, and all of them revolve around, hey, maybe we should have done something about this in the summer.
Correct, but I don't have a time. But I don't have
down this road again.
Well, because I don't have a time machine. Like I can't go back and fix it,
brother.
But my point is,
I'm not asking you to run our fucking football club, Andrew.
No, I know.
People that get paid lots and lots of money to have this fucking
way
foresight,
more,
and their
way
heads
more
are in
than
their
I do.
asses.
Way more than I do, for sure. But listen, this is the point. The reason I'm so fed up is not because of the players, because I do think that the players are giving it their all. I don't think there's players out there that aren't trying. Like, I'm not going to go down that road. I do think that there's some buffoonish behavior. The 2 penalties that were given away in the match today against Chelsea were just stupid. Like, I'm sorry, they were bad plays being made on the pitch. Like you have to get that stuff out of your team if you want to be successful. But there's not a lack of effort, and the manager is not out there just like there is a plan. You can see a plan in place. You can see action that needs to be taken. Where I am with the most of my anger, and this is going to piss a lot of people off, it's with our supporters. It's with our fans, because there's a toxicity within this club that does not come from ownership. It does not come from management. It does not come from players. It comes from supporters. We saw it after the match on Thursday against Bournemouth. People calling him Postecoglou and commenting about his weight and giving it right to the manager, who has gone over there to show his support for them showing up. Look, I get that they put together a dreadful, piss poor performance in a 1-0 defeat to a team that they, let's be honest, are not better than. I know that's really shocking for people to hear. Spurs aren't better than Bournemouth. They're not better than them in the table. They weren't favored in the betting markets to win that match. Most people won't realize that, but Spurs were the underdog in that match and they lost it 1-0. No big fucking deal. Like, I know people want to get upset by me saying that, but these are just facts. Spurs were not expected to win the match. They didn't win the match. And then Spurs fans decided to abuse the manager. That's fucking horrid. And every away supporter who busts their ass to travel to the games and dedicates their time and money and effort deserves credit for doing so, but that does not give you the right to do what they did on Thursday night. And then today, to see the club and a number of people put together a cool tifo before the game, and to see everyone throw the rubbish onto the pitch throughout the match is fucking embarrassing. And every person who threw something onto that pitch should be banned for life from that stadium. They should be embarrassed, and they should be banned for life. The toxicity within this club, for the most part, comes from supporters of this club, and that's what I'm fucking tired of. And
Okay,
if we want to continue to do the get the manager out, or look, you all can have the Levy out conversation if you want to. That's not going to change. Just like Scott said, Levy is responsible for Levy. He responds to Levy. Like, you can't just say get out of the club. He owns the club. What the fuck, unless you've got the money to go give him to buy the club from him, you're not getting the owner out of the club. So you can either, choose not to support the club because of that, or you can try to import your influence. But just saying, oh, well, the chairman's got to go, that doesn't really do anything.
Certainly not. Okay, so now you actually look at, well, what can be done about this? And the one thing that I can say is, yes, it's fucking embarrassing the way that these fans have behaved. But the sentiment is something that I completely understand and validate, right? Do I think that they should be blaming their ire, blaming Ange for and pointing all of their anger at Ange? No, absolutely not. As you can clearly see on the screen, I'm an Ange in guy, and will continue to be for the rest of the time that we're fortunate
everyone
enough
here on the screen
to have.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to remain that as long as we're fortunate enough to have this man and his ethos at our club. It makes a massive difference as a supporter to be able to follow somebody who does shit the right way instead of that Lego-headed asshat down the street. But what I will definitely tell you is that the fans' discontent with being always a bridesmaid is something that when you look at Stamford Bridge, and it's not even remotely close to what we have at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. When you look at fucking Newcastle, as much as they've got money coming in, they've still got the same fucking infrastructure that they've always had. Like, there's small things that are changing, but you look at how long this quote unquote project has been going on at Tottenham, and the only place that we haven't seen consistent investment is on the pitch. And so everybody's like, oh, back to manager, back to manager, back to manager. Oh, hey, we've got a smart way of going about things. We're building for the future with the youth. We're putting a bunch of emphasis into our academy. All of those things I value and appreciate. But when you're looking at a fan base that went to a fucking Champions League final 5 years ago, now still holding on saying, hey, I remember that fucking how good we were. I remember not losing a match at White Hart Lane in the 16-17 season. I remember peak Harry Kane. We had all of that, and we have nothing to show for it. And we've gone through 13 fucking managers in Levy's career, or however many it's been. You're looking at this going, you've got one fucking League Cup and 4 finals to show for it total.
Dude, the only manager...
Not good enough.
The only manager dating back to Juande Ramos who should have been sacked was Nuno. It's the only one. The only one, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair.
And there's arguments around Mourinho and Conte, and I get that, but...
Well, not when you do it.
Well, they shouldn't have been hired in the first place. That was the problem.
Exactly.
I mean, that is again, us looking at the situation, and Pochettino basically came in after that Champions League final and said, you're looking at me going, why is this broken? I'm looking at you going, I asked you for washing machines 2 years ago, and you bought me 4 broken dryers that you fixed in-house.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change. And so literally that relationship towards at the end with Poch was like, listen, I literally took you to a Champions League final, and you're telling me how you don't have the money to pay for the shit we need. We got the greatest striker. We sold Moussa Dembele to fucking China in the middle of a Champions League final run. Like, these are the decisions that Daniel's making on the football pitch. What the fuck?
Like I said, we don't know when to get rid of players. We don't know who to bring in. We don't know when to bring them in.
Now,
I also have to say, go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to say, we've gotten better than that with Johan Lange. Respect for the out, like all of the players that he's gotten out since he's come in. And the way that he's got it done. Dude, Eric Dyer to Bayern, fuck out of here. Yeah. Let's go.
Look,
so,
I agree.
I mean, we're good.
I agree. Outgoings have improved. Incoming still have some work to do, in my opinion. That doesn't happen overnight. I do say, though.
The money has Chelsea.
Yeah.
But you know what? Can I just cut in real quick, Scott? Because I think you only have to look at Chelsea for an example of the fact that sometimes you really do just need to be patient. because for the last few seasons, they were spending money like crazy. It's not like they weren't bringing in quality players. It just was not coming together. And maybe Pochettino takes a little blame for that, but
Obviously,
obviously
they just kept throwing more money at new players, Cass.
But I'm saying it looked at first like these players were not going to work together. Like they did not work as a cohesive squad. And I think they still have a few pieces that you could say that about, but this new manager does seem to actually be getting them to work as a team. So it is possible that once we have a couple more windows of, investment, we're going to be in a similar situation where it all comes together. Because we've already seen signs that like there is a foundation,
I agree.
But
I agree.
Yeah.
No, sorry. I'm just going to say I agree, but I do look at, like you said, the investment still has to come. Nkunku, why can I not think of his name? Pedro Neto, Enzo Fernandez, who I don't even want to say his name because he's
Caicedo.
You guys know why I feel that way. Caicedo, Lavia, who's fucking talented.
$100 million players on the pitch, man.
They are spending money in ways that we're not. I mean, we spent $40 million on an 18-year-old. Cool. I like to see that, but that's not going to get us where we need to be. Now, what I was going to say earlier about Ange, I'm very much Ange, and I believe in Ange Postecoglou, but two things are happening here. One, he's a product of the early success because of that early success in the first 10 matches of his tenure, the project is regressing, and I use air quotes, right? It is regressing if you look on paper. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that bleeds into some of the discontent amongst the fan base. And the one thing I'll say about Ange, where I do get a little bit irritated at times, and again, this is on Levy, this is not on Ange Postecoglou, but you go up 2-0 against Chelsea, and rather than pumping the brakes a little bit and riding the game out, you fly downhill doing a handstand on your bicycle like 1,000 miles an hour continuously, right? The game was so wide open. That was the most like nuts bonkers game I've seen in a very long time. Pretty much any other manager on the planet would have settled things down and controlled that match. And we said, no, fuck it. Like no control here, baby. We're going to keep going 1,000,000 miles an hour. Cool. That's fine. But there are things that you can do differently to impact the game in a different way. And I do think there are probably not, I'm not talking about like these rabid fans who are purple and gold and Ange out, but there are very knowledgeable, tactically astute football fans who probably are looking at some of that and saying, yes, I want entertaining football, but things can be done differently with regards to in-game management when you go up 2-0.
You're asking for pragmatism, which is something that Ange doesn't know the definition of.
But there's
the other thing is you can't look at that decision in a vacuum.
Here, but guys,
playing Timo on the right wing.
Hold on, we gave up those 2 goals, and then Romero immediately gets injured and goes off. Dragusin
right, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Fucking concede.
Jadon Sancho scored 2 minutes after Romero went off the pitch. Like, and I'm not saying that Romero's the linchpin that holds this all together, because we've seen the team has success without him on the pitch.
The linchpin that holds this all together when we're in a game like this.
You saw
the way that they attacked our defense, and Basuma was having to come back to help out Dragusin and was miserable going backwards at defending, as we've seen him be miserable going backwards at defending his entire Tottenham career. And so now you've literally put yourself in a disadvantage simply because of injury. And that goes back to the initial point, which is we don't have like-for-like replacements for the system that we're trying to play because we bought the bargain defender instead of the defender that best suits our system. And it pisses me the fuck off.
But can you not say, then again, I'm not even trying to argue with you. I'm just having the conversation here. Can you not say Romero's out, Radu's on the field now, maybe we don't fly everybody forward and leave Radu exposed when he's just at this point objectively unable to play when he's exposed, right? Those are the things.
But then what you're asking Ange to do is to change his system for one player, and that's not what he does. Like,
yes,
I get what you're.
I understand
I
he
get
doesn't
what
do
you're
that,
saying.
but what I'm saying is there are fans who are going to get irritated that he won't do that, and that's all that I'm saying.
But
right?
to do that on the fly, you have to change multiple pieces.
Yeah,
and that's my whole point. Is you can't, like, the way that we were set up, losing Romero didn't allow you to kind of comfortably switch back to that like 4-4-2 that Ange likes to play sometimes, like when we played against City and we made it super narrow. Like, we didn't have the ability to do that on the fly. And in doing that in preparation, we were able to do that because he knew that he was going to be able to he was going to have to shield Radu from having too much of the ball by himself in space. And when you have Basuma in that spot instead of Rodrigo, or when you have Basuma in that spot instead of playing Kulusevski in a deeper role, like that's not a good approach, especially against a team like Chelsea that can smack you in the mouth on the break.
Let me ask you, all three of you, a question, and I'm not doing this for shock effect or anything, but if I were to tell you while we were recording this podcast right now that the club had decided to move on from Ange Postecoglou, my question is, would it surprise you?
No.
Yes, but also
yes, it would surprise
please
me.
tell us if that's true.
No, it's not true. It's not true. But
Yeah.
so you two say it would surprise you. Caroline and Todd, you say it would surprise you. Scott, I'm with you. It would
Yes.
not surprise me. But the
It'd be
reason it
staying
would
with
not
Daniel Levy.
Thank you. That's where I was going. Because
It would,
I feel,
if the decision were up to Daniel Levy, it wouldn't surprise me.
and
But,
well,
I think
but it is up to Daniel Levy. That's
there
the
have
thing.
been
Not solely.
enough changes to the sporting department. I think that we're not gonna get to that situation where it's up to Daniel Levy's will again. I mean, I know ultimately it is, but I think we put in some guardrails to have people,
I agree.
say let's think about this for a second. We've completely overhauled our transfer strategy. We're trying to set things up to make this manager successful. Do we really want to do this? And I don't think they will.
And Ange, I agree, Kaz, because Ange isn't the win now manager that a Conte or a Mourinho was. They took a giant step back in approach with this appointment. They knew that they were going to get some pushback from the fans, as Ange teams have done his entire career. Like, they knew what they were doing when they brought this approach in. And that's why it allowed Daniel Levy, who's just trying to pump up the value of this club as much as possible. We heard unsubstantiated reports, but reports nonetheless, that Jerry Jones was in town over the course of the last week trying to poke his nose around and figure out what the situation there is. But regardless, Daniel Levy is trying to approach this so he doesn't have any bloated contracts. He wants the next American owner to hand out all the bloated contracts like Todd Bowley's doing down in Chelsea. He's trying to make this as lean and as profitable, on paper at least, as possible. And sacking Ange Postecoglou to bring in fucking Graham Potter before Christmas is ridiculous. And even Daniel Levy can see that.
I think it's really clear that the way Spurs approached the last handful of windows under Ange makes it so that they are wanting to stick with him. And that's the only reason it would surprise me if they did make a change like this. But if they did, it wouldn't shock me just because of we talked about the definition of insanity already, like the reaction of what this club does. The reason that I worry, and I think the only reason I worry, goes back to the pressure that is put on by, and again, I'm not trying to victim blame here, but the supporters of this club are the ones that put this pressure on so harshly, and don't have. I get people say, I've had enough patience and it's been long enough, and I agree, but at the same time, this is 18 months into what I have always said is at least a 3, probably 4 or 5 year project. I said I was going to give it at least 3 years, which again is not the end of this season. It is the end of next season. And the way that the club has approached the transfers and the way that the club has approached everything, frankly, in the last 18 months says to me they are going to continue on this path. And I think it really points to a month from now being in the middle of a January window being a really, really crucial time. And I don't like that, because a January window should not be as crucial as this one seems. But if this club goes and finishes 13th and doesn't come away with any silverware, which right now, if you just take a quick snapshot and look at things, that's kind of the way it looks like it's going. Like, this is a very mid.
No, that's a possibility. It's not the way that it's going. We're still in three competitions. We're in the knockout. We're very close to a League Cup, in a very winnable competition. We've got a very favorable draw in the FA Cup, and we're just off of the mark for knockouts for the guaranteed knockout in the Europa League. If you told me, and we had this conversation, Andrew, so I'm going to go ahead and remind you. If you told me that this club finished 7th or 8th, but came home with a Europa League and a League Cup, everybody would have been like, that's a win for me. I'll take it. Let's go on to the next year of the Ange project. And so that's just as realistic of a possibility as us finishing 13th with nothing, as it stands right now.
All the FA Cup draw being good and the League Cup looking good. Like, they have to play Rangers this week in what is an extreme.
It's fucking Rangers. Don't stop. It's Rangers.
No. Todd.
It was Ipswich.
This team just lost to Ipswich. It lost to Palace. It lost to Bournemouth. It had a 2-0 lead 10 minutes in against Chelsea and lost that. Like, this team can lose to anybody. We're not
I agree,
saying it's
but I'm
just
not looking
X.
at. They're not. Dude, Rangers is not Ipswich quality. Is my point.
I agree.
That's the point that I'm trying to get at right now, right? Like, it's Rangers, and like I'm not shitting on the Scottish Premier League as much as I'm shitting on the Scottish Premier League because it's fucking second rate. And Joe Hart went there when he couldn't hold a fucking pair of gloves for Nuno and won 3 trophies or 4 trophies or whatever for Ange. I'm just saying, like, there are folks that look at this and go, "Oh my days." And I don't want to be one of those guys right now. I want to look at this for exactly what it is: a tough away fixture at one of the wildest places to play a soccer match in Europe. So shout to the Ibrox and shout to the atmosphere that Rangers are going to bring, with a third-rate professional level team that we should absolutely smoke this Thursday.
But let me present to you the fact that you'll have obviously Rodrigo Bentancur in the midfield because he can play in Europa League. You won't have Jed Spence. You may not have either of your center backs. Plus, you won't have Ben Davis likely. Like, the injuries aren't going away. Like, this is not all of a sudden going to be a full strength team. I'm just saying, I don't go into any match. I didn't go into today's match. I didn't go into Thursday's match, and I won't go into next Thursday's match thinking this should be a victory because of where this team is. And my only point about how crucial this match is, if you're talking about actually, I think it's a little bit precocious of us to talk about winning something this year for this club with the state that it's in. But if you want to talk about that, because look at them, because look at the way they've been playing.
Well, because we beat City twice in fucking 2 weeks. Get out of here. We can play with anybody in the fucking world, and that's my point. When you get into a cup competition and you get hot, it's not about the culmination of a season where you've got to play City twice, and in the middle you play Ipswich and you drop a game.
Is 5 losses in your last 9 Premier League matches hot? Because it's not hot to me. They're not hot. They're not. They're ice cold.
I'm not sitting. They don't hand out trophies next fucking week, Andrew.
I know that, but you got to win the matches. But you got to win the matches next week to in order to get to the point where that's my only point. You have to get to that point.
I'm not disagreeing with you, dude. But as I looked at these matches over this stretch where we said, "Hey, we're going to have a really tough stretch." We talked about this a month ago. Looking forward, saying this portion of November, December is going to suck a lot. And that's where we're at. And guess what, Andrew? It's fucking sucking a lot. And the fact that we've got injuries has compounded the suck. And the fact that we beat City in the middle of that twice and then lost to Ipswich and fucking Bournemouth compounds that even more. And then when you lose to a rival like Chelsea after going up 2 goals, it hurts even more. And so all of this compounds the suck. But it doesn't change the fact that this suck was always going to be part of our season.
My question is, why is it that we do beat City twice? And if you look at our last 10 matches, those 2 City results are the only good things that have happened. We are peppered with losses throughout the last 10 matches.
I'll answer that if you want. City went through a terrible, terrible stretch and kind of still are going through a terrible, terrible stretch. Like, City are not the big bad City that they have been in years past. And we got them twice. Like, and by the way, the first time we beat them, they were playing a heavily rotated side, and we got them. And the second time we beat them, they played directly into our hand and played the way that we want every team to play against us.
And this is the thing, Andrew, is that we have a conversation about this team, and with the shitty things that are going on about this squad are clearly evident. And we talked a few episodes ago about how the losses that we were sustaining to these lesser sides were clearly an indication of the fact that we weren't quite ready in this team and we needed more bolstering. And then when you see the injuries come to the fore, or in Bentancur's case, a suspension, but when you see the depletion of the side, then we get down to those rotational pieces, those Fraser Forsters, the Basuma starting in the middle with Sarr and against Chelsea. Like when you're looking at this, you're going, well, fuck, that just clearly lines up the fact that we needed more help along the way, and we still need more help because we're that far away. But when we're able to get all these pieces back and like what we're saying is that the business end of the season, and I said this on a few pods ago as well, the business end of the season lines up for us to be a better club then than we were at the beginning. And we're going through the ups and downs right now because our team is hurt, because we're having to rotate people, because Sonny misses 3 fucking wide open chances, which never happens. And we lose a shit game at home to Chelsea.
But
that's the conversation nobody wants to have is that these are things that are happening way more regularly with Sonny than I can remember.
The problem is that, like Andrew alluded to, we still have to stay alive in all these competitions. And I have to be quite honest, with the injuries we have at the moment and the suspensions, I just don't feel confident that we're going to win any given game in the next few weeks. Like, I just don't. And that includes 2 pretty crucial games. I mean, if we don't beat Rangers, it doesn't mean we're out of the Europa League by any means. But we've also got the League Cup game against Manchester United, which is a knockout. So and
they're in a shit box as well.
And
I mean,
what the
they are. That's
well,
true.
but here's the thing. What a poor result against Rangers would do on Thursday is it would more than likely add 2 matches to your schedule down the road, which is not what you want when you're going through everything that you're going through, because you're going to have to play an extra knockout round more than likely if you don't finish in the top 8. I agree with everything you both said, Todd. The injury stuff is where we're at. It's what we experienced last year, and the investment needs to come. And I think that's kind of, I feel like I'm looping back around to saying what I said a little bit earlier with, I didn't want January to be this crucial, but it feels more crucial than I feel like it has more weight than it needed to have.
Well, when you spend the majority of your transfer budget on 18-year-olds, Andrew, that's bound to happen.
Right. But that's what they did. But that's why the patience conversation, I think, needs to continue to be had. And I just, not only do I want our fans
patience with whom?
From fans
ourselves,
with the club,
frankly. Like our expectations.
Yes.
Our temperament.
Patience from fans with the club.
Dude, we're still living.
And like Caroline saying, the word expectation.
The other team is always trying to win. This is something I repeat to myself constantly because I think it's helpful to remember.
No one's going to lay down for you.
Yeah.
No. But it feels, I guess, in narrative as though Spurs beat themselves more often than not. And I agree that the other team is always trying to win. I value that. But just look at the result today and then tell me that we didn't beat ourselves.
I don't think that's the case today. Clearly. I think Chelsea were clearly the better team today.
You don't think us flashing at least 4 chances wide and giving away 2 penalties isn't us beating ourselves?
Well,
I'm just curious.
I think giving away the penalties in the way that we did.
Well, I mean, I said what I said.
Right.
I have to agree with Todd that we are well capable of beating ourselves, and we've proven that time and time again. I know that there are people on this pod who will not agree with me, but I personally think Radu Dragoshin and Ben Davies are serviceable enough to go out and win some of these games that we've lost, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say like, whoop, fuck it. We don't have our players stuck because we don't have enough depth. We do need the depth, but we can be getting better results in these matches too. And both things can be true at the same time.
Scotty, I'm not going to disagree with you. They went out and beat Man City 4-0 a few weeks ago. Those 2 guys. Like, I agree.
Right? Exactly. And that's why I'm frustrated. And that's why when I look at the rest of the season, do I believe in my heart that we are capable of winning the Europa League? Fuck no. We are the most inconsistent side in the competition, to be completely honest. So do I think there's
We've only lost 1 match in that competition.
But could we?
Yes, but look at our form right now is what I'm saying. And we're going to end.
No, but I mean, our form in the league and our form in the Europa League are 2 different things. Like, you can't, like, they're not. It's
football
not
is football to me. Football is football to me.
It is, but okay. But we've talked at length on this podcast, Scott, about the levels above that the Premier League is. It just is. The speed, 100%. The physicality, the weather conditions, it's a bag of shit. And like you look at it and you go, you have to be firing on all cylinders at all times in those competitions.
I completely
agree. Go to Europe, When you go to Europe, there's no cities, there's no Liverpools, there's you know what I mean? There's shit.
Hey.
There's no that scum down the road in this particular competition. And so like we've already seen the toughest team that we're going to face. I'm not saying we're not going to lose anymore, but we've already seen the toughest team that we're going to face, which has 4 fucking ex-Tottenham players that couldn't carry a fucking jock strap in it.
And we drop points against Roma at home, who is honestly, I'm not saying this to be dramatic. They are in severe danger of getting relegated from Serie A. They are a bad football team, right? And we drop
points. Was turning back the clock. Like he looked great.
Right, exactly. So all I'm saying is if we end up in the round of 32 and we have to play all these matches, we will stumble at some point, is what I'm telling you in my heart, how I feel, right? We will stumble. And I think there's a very good chance that we end up bottom half of the table with no trophies at the end of the season, which is okay. Like, I'm not saying that's fucking crazy.
How far we have fucking come in 3 weeks, Scotty. How far we've come in 3 weeks. The back of 2 Man City victories, and gosh, realistically, this team's got a shot at it's like it's the same fucking kids, it's the same fucking system, everything is the same. The only difference is we've had some injuries, and the media has lost their goddamn mind.
You know what I think?
Fucking out of control stuff happening right now, and we're absolutely under a microscope when we're looking at the Ange situation. Like, zoom out a little bit. Fuck Caroline.
No, I agree. The narrative certainly does not help, because I was about to tear my hair out listening to the NBC commentary today. I truly was. But, I think Scott is right that these players are capable. For me, the reason I'm not feeling confident lately is because it feels like the margin of error has just become so slim because of the injury crisis, like just because of the fixture pileup. Like, a lot of factors are contributing to it being very difficult for us to find wins, even though we absolutely can get those wins. There's just not a lot of room for error, basically.
Mm-hmm. I mean, which is all that I'm saying. Thank you, Caroline. The small margin of error is where I lose confidence and faith that the good things will happen this season. I need to finish my point. That's okay. Like, I'm not going to be panicking and jumping ship if that happens. If we finish bottom half of the table with no trophies, it's part of the growth of the Ange Postecoglou project. It's fine. Iowa State lost. That's all I care about. Like, whatever, right? We'll see what happens with Spurs. But I think all I'm saying is, like, we need to take a step back. We need to understand that we're not in a great place right now. Even though we beat City twice, the results around that tell me that we're in a very bad place as a club. And that's okay, but it's what's probably going to happen this season. And I'm just bracing myself for, again, circa 10th place finish and no trophies, and we kick on and see what happens after that. But the investment is the biggest kicker in all of this, which we've obviously harped the whole show. It's got to be there. Things are going to, lead to nothing more than Ainge being sacked and us in this mess again 18 months from now with someone else.
We'll start to wind down this portion of the conversation here. I agree 100% with you, Scott, that, look, if the team doesn't win anything this year, and if they finish, God forbid, like 13th or something, I'm still going to say you got to continue to back this guy and invest in this guy and try to figure it out with this guy, because continuing to chop and change the manager and chop and change the playing style every 18 months is not going to get anything done. To Todd's point, I'm not sure after a few weeks ago, after 2 wins over Man City, I'm not sure my expectations really actually did get any different than they were. It was really cool to see them beat Man City twice in a matter of a few weeks, but that didn't change the fact that this is still a growth project and it's a long rebuild thing that they've got to continue to see out. Like, you're going to have great moments like they did in those 2 matches against City, and then you're going to have the Ipswiches and the Galatasarays and the Romas and the Chelseas and all of these, the Crystal Palaces. You're going to continue to have those bleak moments as well. That's part of what and that's the painful part of long and painful rebuild.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with any of that. I guess I just want to clarify while we have everybody on this pod. No one else thinks that we're going to win something this year. Is that correct? Right now.
I mean, if I had to predict, if are we going to win something? No, probably
I
not.
think the FA Cup is totally still on the table, because we don't have to worry about that until January, and we could have some players back by then. And, I don't know. United are in a bad place, so I'm not going to write off the League Cup either.
Scott, do you think we can win something this year?
In my heart, no. But the League Cup, maybe. The Europa League, no. I just don't think we have the consistency paired with what's going to be required from the perspective of longevity in that competition. I just, again, like I said earlier, I think that this club shows us over and over that they are going to stumble at some point. And if we end up in the round of 32 again, we're talking, I think, 11 matches that are required to play if you want to win that competition from that point on. And again, Spurs, just objectively looking at the history of this club over the season, will stumble at some point in those 11 matches. But the League Cup, possibly. I think we can beat United, and then if you're in the semifinals, anything can happen, right? So there's potential there. The FA Cup, no, I do not think so. I think there's too many good teams in that competition that will come up against at least two of them, and I just don't have the faith in this club to do it this season. I say that very boldly, this season, right?
I'm very curious as to what the betting lines would say about that, because if you remember, going into the Europa League, Tottenham were the first overall favorite for that competition. I'm going to go on record right now and
It's almost as if you just saw me looking down at my phone to look exactly at what you're talking about. I don't have a number for you, unfortunately, but
we've been friends for a minute, Andrew.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on record and say we absolutely win something this year. I'm still standing by. I knew that this lull would come. I'm thankful that it has come in this particular area of the season, as opposed to, I don't know, fucking May or, February, May to May. I really think Ange wins the League Cup this year. I believe that in my guts. And I think statistically we have a better chance of winning the Europa League than we do any of the other three trophies, because I think Liverpool and Arsenal are still alive in the League Cup, and everybody's still alive in the FA Cup. And as I mentioned, we've already seen the toughest competition that we're going to face, and we went to their place and lost with a rotated side. But when we see them in a knockout round and everybody's fit, I absolutely think we wipe the floor with Galatasaray. And yes, Scotty, there are some other points in that competition that are sticky. Like, nobody wants to go to any of those Greek sides on a European night. Like, that shit gets wild. But I honestly, I think that, like, I'm so Ange in. I completely believe in what we're doing. I agree with Caroline that, even if we don't beat Rangers and we drop down to the second portion of the Europa League, we're going to get some reinforcements in January, and that's going to give us some opportunities. People are going to get healthy. Like, the business end of the system of the season is still to come, guys. And I truly believe that we've got something for folks out there.
For the record, there is a betting market out there which does not spend any money with us to sponsor them, so I'm not going to mention them, but they do still have Tottenham listed as the favorite to win the Europa League. The second choice in that competition right now, Manchester United. So that's just for the record. And as we did see this earlier this week, Spurs were drawn away to Tamworth FC, a non-league side, in the third round. That match is set for January 12th at the Lamb Ground. I'm sure there will be very, very, very Marine vibes about that match. And that is
Will Lakeshire hat trick incoming.
That is really cool. And I'm look, these are still the things that excite me about watching Spurs on a weekly basis. Like, I was not excited to watch them against Chelsea today. I was not really all that excited to watch them against Bournemouth this week, but like, I'm still doing it, and we're still here talking about it, right? This is still the thing that we're passionate about, and it gets us fired up. We get frustrated by it at times as well. I don't want to like push Spurs Women to the back of the pod like we have today, but god damn, that was an important win that they got today as well.
Huge.
A 2-1 victory over Everton, which came on the back of a Bethany England penalty, which I didn't really see the foul. Caroline, maybe you can help clarify for me here. All of a sudden, Spurs just had a penalty early in the second half, and I was like, okay. Spurs ended up taking the lead and went on to win it from there. They end a 2-match WSL slide and move up to 6th in the table. Caroline, this was fun, and for me, the big big change is the return of Haley Rasso and really kind of just running shit in the midfield. What did you see? What was your takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, we had heard that she had a really strong international break, so I was kind of expecting her to hit the ground running when she came back. And honestly, I feel like she was just unlucky not to get on the score sheet because she was probably my player of the match. And, I think also didn't get to start, but came on as a sub. Maiteros, she's back. That's important because I think she's going to be really integral to sort of restoring our midfield, which has not been looking great in recent games. But today, we actually were playing sort of the classic RV ball or whatever you want to call
Bobby
it.
ball.
I still think RV ball sounds silly, so
yeah,
we'll go with
Bobby ball. Bobby ball. It's alliterative.
Yeah, Bobby ball was rolling today for sure, and it looked like anyone could have scored. Obviously, I would have liked to see more actual goals, but the important thing was we're starting to get back into those goal scoring positions. And poor Martha Thomas had a beautiful shot that was saved by Courtney Brosnan, and then I really would have loved for her to finally get a goal because I think she could use it for her confidence. But never a bad thing for our captain to score 2 goals, and including the game winner. Oh, and on the penalty, I didn't see it, and YouTube is really not amenable to rewinding a live event. So I was trying to go back and see the replay again, but it would not let me. But
it's easier to do on mobile, but who wants to watch on your phone?
Yeah, well,
I was not watching on the phone. I was watching on the computer. So
yeah, the commentator said it was a holding foul on the corner, which
like obstruction.
Obviously we don't have that called very often, but
no.
Today's ref was very, very vigilant. I'll say that. She was on.
I'll take it.
Yeah. At least it worked in our favor this time.
To your point about Bobby ball, the 58% possession, which is about what you would expect from that kind of thing, but 26 total shots. Now, only 8 of those on target, but 26 shots. It was open. The ball was flying, and that's kind of what you want. 5 big chances for Spurs, and produced 12 corners. Like, it was just everything was going forward, and that's kind of what you want to see. And again, you pointed it out. Oroz coming back in and Rasso, the midfield is kind of the engine of this for me, and being able to feed balls up to the likes of Thomas and England and Jess Naz and get them going forward and moving it. It was really, really awesome to see. The one question I had for you is this, other than maybe the goalkeeper, which I don't think we've seen anything out of Heaps that we don't like, but is this the best 11 for Spurs Women at the moment? The 11 that we saw today and that we're seeing, if you're watching on the YouTube channel that you're seeing flash across the screen there, I think this might be their best 11 at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think there's really too much argument about it. And, honestly, Eleanor, this was her first WSL start, but that goal would have been really tough to save. It was just a golazo, as they say.
It was a screamer, yeah.
Yeah, not dissimilar to what Evelina Simonin did in our last game, but I think she's looked pretty promising. So there's even potential for, her to claim that number 1 spot from Becky Spencer. I don't think we've been totally convinced by her this season. Today she just missed out because she was ill, but we'll just have to keep an eye on that one. But otherwise, I do think this is probably our strongest team. And the only really weak link today, I would say, was Drew Spence was not having a particularly great game. It didn't seem like the ball was sticking to her at all, unlike the rest of the team. Because I thought our passing was much improved from the last game.
Drew Spence kind of had a Heung-min Son type of game. Let's put it that way.
A wee bit, yeah.
They were very, very similar. I would agree with that. Busy week for Spurs Women. They have a 2-match week this week. Wednesday, they get a trip to Crystal Palace in the League Cup. That should be a pretty heavily rotated side because they only, I think, need a draw, right, to advance out of that. And then they head further south next Saturday back in the WSL for a trip to Brighton. So 2 road games for Spurs Women this week. Busy week. And again, we'll probably see rotation at midweek. Busy week on that end as well. Busy week for Spurs Men, as we mentioned earlier. Away to Rangers on Thursday in the Europa League. Level on points in the Europa League. That's a really crucial match for top 8. Gotta get a result there. And then the weekend, a trip back to the South Coast for Spurs as they face Southampton. We'll be back here next week to recap all of it, and I'm sure the fallout from everything that's gone on this week will surely not cause any controversy. Surely everything will just be fine, and we'll all just be able to come here next week and have a nice, calm, level-headed podcast like we do here at the Tottenham Depot. That is what we love. We just love being calm and level-headed and not screaming and ranting and not doing any of that. For the love of God, stop throwing things on the fucking pitch, people. Grow up. We live in a goddamn society. Act like it.
We're not animals.
Or children. I don't know. Some of them could have been children.
Thank you for letting me get that off my chest. I'm filled with so much rage about stupid people in this world, and I hate when they are people that support the thing that I support, which is this football club. That really, really irritates me. It really, really does. That is going to do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. Before I get all worked up again, feel my blood pressure boiling. I'm just gonna bring it down a notch, and we're gonna wrap the pod there. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot, and leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. You can follow Scott at ScottGBird, follow Todd at TC_Kasho, follow Caroline at CGStefco, follow me at A Stetka, and most importantly, follow us at Tottenham Depot on all of the socials. Thanks for those of you who've reached out on the Blue Sky. The Blue Sky is pumping. We've got positivity, at least a little bit, for the most part, somewhat, at least versus the other place. That's been going good. I like that. I know. Look, we're going to embrace it while we have it. But
we are people, sir. Hey, follow Digital
that.
Spurs. Danny's doing incredible holiday work. So if you need your Spurs stuff for the holiday to help lift your spirits, I just got mine. It's pretty epic.
No question about it. That's going to do it for us here at the Tottenham Depot. We will talk to you next week. Until then, as always, come on, you Spurs.